let's get started. Today is the day one. Welcome to the kickoff session of our full stack JavaScript bootcamp. It's already a significant commitment that you are all joined this Sunday to the class. And here's what we're gonna do today. You'll get a short intro about us, then you will get an overview of our course from our course architect, Alex, and he's gonna start the bootcamp. Yeah, Alex. Overall, today
Hey
So today it will take us about 2.5 hours. We'll try to make it shorter, but let's see how it goes. Should be not more than 2.5 hours. Okay, let me introduce myself if you don't know. My name is Evgeny Game. I'm organizer of this bootcamp along with the international company Autos. I work as a software engineer in test at one well-known fintech company. At the same time, I'm building dev and QA community through organizing meetups in the US, and some of you might already join through this platform. And this is very important for you because you'll get not only the skills from this bootcamp, but also a potential network of hiring companies. Also, I'm a founder of another bootcamp company called TestPro, and you're welcome to add me in the LinkedIn, please. If you can you ping your link? Yes, of course. Let me get this copy link address, and here's you get my LinkedIn. Yeah, welcome. Let me tell you about our community and network and my story. I was building this meetup networking for about almost 2 years. Way back when I started working as a software QA analyst, I was eager to learn, very hungry for knowledge, and was trying to learn as much as possible. I bought up hundreds of courses on Udemy, like Pluralsight, YouTube, and all these cheap courses. However, it made me more confused. What I was looking for is some community where I could learn and share with experience with the same folks like me, but that time there was not that much. So that's why I decided to make it in Los Angeles, and that's how we started gathering actually at the local bars and restaurants, and then we started hosting our meetups every month at WeWork co-working spaces. You know this probably company. After a while, some hiring managers began inviting us to their companies to host our events. In this picture, we are hosting a meetup at a company called Acorns. It's in Irvine, actually. And at the same time, actually, we started bootcamp for software testers. So we did it pretty consistently. Every month, we were inviting hiring managers, QAs, developers. And in one of those meetups, one manager, she approached me and told me that she actually hired a couple engineers from our previous meetups. And that thing fired me up. I was like, oh, that's so inspiring for me. So I decided to expand. And in this slide, you can see, so we started hosting our meetups in New York City, in Seattle, a couple times in Tampa, Miami, and one time we did it in San Francisco, San Diego a couple times, and with companies like Bitly, Hulu, Beachbody, Acorns, GoodRx, like pretty interesting companies and pretty famous actually, some of them. And now we have about 4,164 members so far, not all of them, obviously, they are QAs or like developers or managers, but that's pretty large network. Still, building a relationship on these meetups with hiring companies allowed us to make a partnership with a hosting mockup for hosting mockup interviews for students of the bootcamp. So that part is tremendous help for you, like for job searching and placement for students. You know, so I think that's I know that a lot of students, they got hired through this through those kind of meetups. Okay, so let's talk about what is Otus U and what kind of project is this? So it is an international project of tech meetup that I just told you, and parent company, it's an educational company Otus, which is based in Moscow. They already been in the market for 3 years so far, and they have tracking of 70 plus programs in software development, and not only software development. So they already graduate like 2,500 students. However, this cohort is the first in US, and when we partnered, I want to make a bootcamp that I want to get personally myself, and this is the main focus that we were focusing. Like, first of all, it should be affordable. Second, I want to have flexible schedules since I am working, right? And third, that I would like to see, it should be live sessions like this one, so you can ask questions directly. And obviously, I would like to learn relevant to the market skills, and that's what we get here. And now I welcome Alex. He is our main instructor, course architect, actually. He developed this course. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks, Evgeny. Very inspiring speech, especially this part about growing the meetup community. I think it's it's really a nice story. Hi everyone. I'm happy to welcome you on this JavaScript Fullstack Bootcamp, our first lesson today. Cheers. Shall I? Thanks. I will introduce myself a little. Also introduce our colleague Michael, who is our teacher, another one, and then after a slight pause, we're gonna continue with material about the course and about the today's lesson specifically. So hi everyone. Again, I'm Alex. I'm currently located in Amsterdam, Netherlands, so in Europe. I'm a developer, JavaScript developer. In the past, in the present. I started with JavaScript, in fact, around 10 years ago, and still enjoying this programming language a lot. My current role is you can say technical lead in an ING company. ING company is it's a bank located in Netherlands, which has multiple branches in all over the world. Actually, what we are doing with the ING company is quite an interesting project. To be honest, I like it and enjoy it pretty well. We are configuring and maintaining the pipeline for front-end developers. That's a little different focus that I was doing in the past years. So I actually came from the front-end stack. Was all the time with the growing JavaScript for last 10 years. So we started without jQuery, then we saw jQuery, Backbone, Marionette, XJS. I think at that time also touched this framework, this nice framework, a lot. What else? Then these huge projects like React, like Angular, Vue.js appeared. So also touched and played with them nicely. That's really breathtaking technologies, I think. Yeah, so I started with JavaScript. I still doing JavaScript, enjoying it. And I think around 3 years ago, I started thinking of how can I share the knowledge that I get through all these years. And also, I found this company, Otus, which it gave me an opportunity to build my own course. So that's how I started actually my career in education. Yeah, we made a JavaScript course and we made a Node.js course. Now, actually, our JavaScript course split it into multiple ones. Our other instructor, Michael, which will give a presentation in a minute, he's also author of one of the courses. Yeah. Yeah, that's me, and that's my colleague Michael. Yeah, in fact, we know each other for a long, long time. I think it's more than 20 years now. Yeah, we are colleagues, and we are almost neighbors in here in Amsterdam. He's also an employer in ING Bank. He's a chapter lead or a team lead in the bank. And in his experience, he's also worked a lot with front-end technologies. But I think in ING, he was hired as a full stack developer, so not only doing JavaScript, which we have a really interesting stack, by the way, in the bank. We are working on a web component stack, which is quite native, and I think is a little rare nowadays, but still very, very exciting technology, I would say. Yeah, and Michael also joined us in this Otus company. So we are colleagues for about 3 years already in education as well. And yeah, I can recommend Michael from all pieces that I know him. He's doing great lessons. He's doing great activities. By the way, he also creating meetups. He presenter in many and speaker in many conferences. You can maybe Google him in YouTube and find something interesting. Yeah, so that's us. Thanks. I give word back to Evgeny.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, Mike will be on the next Saturday, right, Alex?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, yeah. And we have a question, do you have a link for ORSU course catalog? So for right now, the course catalog, we start with this JavaScript bootcamp. But the parent company, they have 70 courses, but they are not in English version. So yeah, I can send you a link, but they probably will be useless at this moment. We will expand more courses, and I will let you know. Okay, tell us about yourself. Let's do a quick poll because we introduce ourselves. We also know who you are, what are you doing. Like, this is very brief poll for, let's have like 2 minutes for that, okay? All right, just answer those 2 simple questions. Answer in the chat. What we were asking basically, what is your expectation from this bootcamp? We have 4 different answers, and it's up to you. You can. Okay, let me share the results. It's pretty interesting, I think. So the majority of you guys' expectations are to improve software development skills and the second would be get a new job, which is also fair enough, right? It's very interesting. Obviously, if you improve your software skills, there's big possibilities that you either will get a promotion in your current company, or you can get hired for a new position in different company. And what's your level of knowledge in web development? I'm really happy that most of you have already learned some JS and HTML, CSS. We have a couple complete beginners, and we have working people. That's also very interesting. Okay, let's keep going. Alex, then let me stop sharing my screen. You can start your own, and welcome to Alex. I'll mute myself.
Thanks, Evgeny, again. I'll pick it from now. Okay. So now you should be able to see my screen. Please put a plus and on the chat if and the minus if it's not seen. Okay, here we go. Thanks again. Yeah, here's my part of today's lesson. Yeah, in fact, we started the course today, and today is our first lesson. It's called Welcome to Fullstack JavaScript course. And of course, the first lesson has a little mixed content. So first part of it, the first goal of this lesson is to introduce ourselves, introduce yourself if that's possible. I think that can help us in the future and also break the ice in the beginning. So that would be really helpful. A little about what is awaiting for us. So we go through a little introduction to the course itself. We will go through the technical details, how the work is going to be organized, how the structure of the course is written. And then we go to the second part, which in fact I think is much bigger than the first one. In our first part, in our first lesson, we touched some aspects of JavaScript. One of my students actually called it best parts of JavaScript. I think that's sounds a little like irony, but actually, as I said, I love JavaScript language, so I hope you enjoy it as well as I do. So our goals today is to get to know each other. That's what we're already starting to do. Overview some JavaScript common questions, interview questions, and some technical tasks to accomplish, and understand our course, how it's structured, what you can wait from it. All right, and I think in this time I'm gonna stop my video to make our connection a little more stable. And what I actually wanted to add in here, thanks for answers for this poll that Evgeny did. That's nice. But I think what can also help us if you just write one or two sentences in chat for us. Who are you? What's your programming experience? What do you expect from the course? That's if that was not covered in the poll, please feel free to say a few words in the chat. That would be awesome. All right, so then we begin with our plan for today for our agenda, and the first part of it was to introduce the course itself, and here we go. So the course, we have two instructors. That's me, Alex, and Michael. I already introduced us, both of us. You can also find us in Twitter, on any other channel that you prefer, and feel free to reach and drop a question. I will be happy to answer them. I think Slack we're gonna use as a main channel for our course. So don't hesitate and join in Slack, or Evgeny already posted the link. We will share news there. We will share some maybe technical questions, something interesting information in there. So feel free to follow. That's I think it makes sense. Okay, so about the course, we decided to focus on three big topics in this course. First of all, we start with JavaScript as a main programming language for all the technologies that we are gonna go through the course. And we start with JavaScript. In fact, I will show you it in more details in the next slide. Then we have Node.js for backend application. We cover this part quite well, and React. React, I think, is a really obvious choice. It's one of the biggest, one of the most breathtaking nowadays frameworks in JavaScript. So that was not that hard question to answer, which technologies we're gonna choose. Node.js, I'm really passionate about that. In fact, I'm currently doing the helping the conference in here with a Node.js stack on that. So about the course again. We're gonna go with Saturdays and Sundays, and I think that's also a perfect time for to start your Sunday, because the lessons are in the morning, and of course Sunday and Saturday, and each lesson is considered to be 1.5 to 2 hours at maximum. What happens in this lesson is mostly theory, but not only, of course. So we will show you how it's gonna go today. But it's not only theory, in which, of course, we have some slides that we prepared, some examples that we want to share with you. But also we will do some kind of dive into code. Oh, thanks for so many answers in the chat. That's really awesome. Yeah, let me quickly continue in here. So yeah, I was saying about Sundays and Saturdays, and actually we thought of how it's gonna go with homeworks as well, because there's has some pause during the weekdays, but I think we covered it quite well. So we decided that self-assignments, which of course you can expect from this course, and in fact those are a lot of these practical assignments. We structured our homeworks in that way that on Sunday we will give a homework, and on Saturday we will maybe spend some time to discuss it all together. So next week we will start with overviewing the material for the previous homework. Okay, so that's already something I told you. Then how many lessons do we have? Well, that's almost 4 months, and that's 24 lessons as webinars, as we're doing today. And then we have the last 2 weeks to spend as a self-assignment on your own project, and we expect it to happen for the last 2 weeks. And during these 2 weeks, in fact, you will have also a meeting with us to discuss how the project, how your work is going, and maybe we'll can give you some advices about that. All right. Yeah, we have a link to full agenda of the course. I will just post it in the chat, so you can go into really detailed agenda. It even has some homeworks prepared. But of course, some small details can change. For that, just follow us in Slack or in any other channel. And feel free to ask any question if you'd like to. All right, and then we go for the course agenda. It's not that detailed as in a link above, but I'll just point at a few main topics in here. So first of all, as I already said, we begin with JavaScript. We expect our students already have some knowledge of JavaScript, if not of JavaScript, that also can be some other programming language. But we expect that you have some experience with programming already. That will give you more opportunities in the course. And what we do in the first module, let's call it like that, we overview some details of JavaScript, and you can think of it as a good example as our today's lesson, actually. So we will go through some interesting examples that are frequently asked in the job interviews, so that can be helpful already. And that will take about 3 lessons to accomplish. Then we switch, and also browser API. That's really important in every JavaScript developer stack. Then we also introduce NPM and Node.js in this module, just slightly, because we have a deep dive into Node.js later in the course. And test-driven development (TDD) is quite important, and we practice this through all the course. So we hope that that you will also apply this technique in your everyday job. That's actually quite popular nowadays, I think, and asked a lot as a prerequisite for some companies. All right, let me quickly scroll it down. I think Evgeny already answered most of the questions. I'll just yeah, if you put any questions in there, every other slide I will overview them and I try to answer, of course. All right, then the second model is Node.js model, and we, as I said, we deep dive into this technology. We start with a standard library, like how it's organized. I can give you some examples, like how modules are resolved, what is the model resolution algorithm in Node.js. I'm talking about CommonJS versus ECMAScript modules nowadays. What is event loop in Node.js, and also questions like how to use streams, why would you even use streams, and what are the best practices to use all of these technologies and libraries. And the second part of this model is about Express. So we start with an overall overview of Node.js technology, of a Node.js framework or platform, and then we go into a more like a business logic specifics applications. And that's why we introduced Express. Express is one of the most popular libraries in the Node.js world. Of course, you can, if you're familiar with Node.js stack, you might ask, why have you chosen Express and not Koa, for example, not TSED or not Nest.js? Those all are awesome libraries and frameworks. I love them, but Express still is the most popular, and I think that already is a good reason why we chosen that. REST APIs, of course, we will make our own REST APIs, and you will get familiarized with that. If you haven't heard of them, don't worry, that's completely all right. And then we're back to our front-end part of our course, which is React.js. Of course, we start with some setup, local setup, how to prepare your local environment to build a project, to test it. So we start with Webpack, we kick off of Webpack, and then all things that you can ask about React yourself. What is JS6, how to build components, what are high-level components. Of course, we talk about application state. We chosen Redux as I think still a main community choice for application state management with the React world. But we will discuss different alternatives, or different alternatives and techniques, of course, and patterns that are used in React world. Things like Flux. What is Flux? What is CQRS? Command query responsibility segregation. And I think not a summary, but in the final part of this model, we go to the questions like how to make also the server-side rendering of a React. So for that one, we're gonna use Next.js. I think is #1 technology for this question in React world. Yeah, so that's React. I think we covered it quite good. And then the last part is a project. Last part is a project, and you can find the full description of the project that we planned in this link that I posted above. But in short, we propose you to choose this topic, but also you can always volunteer and choose the alternative if you would like to, and then we will try to help you as much as is possible. Yeah, I see some questions. I'm gonna answer them now. So first one was Node.js is backend and React is frontend. That's correct. Thanks for the question. how many weeks apart between each? That's very very interesting question. Thanks for that. Thanks, Ruben. Basically, we in our plans we go each week. But again, thanks for the question. We have 2 pauses during the course. Each pause is a week. So between the Node.js and React, you can expect 1 week pause. Yeah, so last 2 weeks I have filled with your project work, and we gonna meet this time and try to help each other, try to check how is everything is going with the project, and if you need any help, we will try to do that. Okay, yeah, I think that's almost it about the course. Just a few more notes about that. Well, the goals of the course, I think they actually we'll cover it in the poll that Evgeny did in the beginning. So first, we really focus on improving software development skills of our students, and for that one we practice with a lot of assignments, and also we give a theory about patterns, different patterns to apply. Like you can find in here that we at least we will overview these patterns, like what is the event-based architecture, what is event loop, and how it's actually working in Node.js world, and middlewares. And middlewares are those are mostly applied to Express.js library, and I think that's the heart of this framework in there. Well, modulus test-driven development. Actually, these patterns, I think you should not aim for learning names or titles of these patterns, because any library or any or even any piece of code is using some of the patterns. But we will maybe focus on some of them just to describe them better. So you can, if you are asked during the interview about what is an event loop, be sure that you will know what to answer for that, and maybe in too depth details that your interviewer is expecting. Of course, as we are starting with JavaScript, with the JavaScript module, we are gonna spend our whole course in this language. So we're gonna practice a lot of JavaScript. So you can also expect that your knowledge of this language will grow during the course, and you will practice a lot. So that's what you can expect. Node.js and React, we will of course practice with them during the course. Yeah, the project that I already mentioned a few times, I think, and we all think it's one of the parts of this course. It actually. Yeah, I experienced it myself many times. When you come to interview and you have some projects in your GitHub page, in your GitHub account, that just helps you a lot, and you can just start talking about it. You can start describing your project. What was a challenge to build it? What was the technology? Why you've chosen it? And so on and so forth. And when you're talking about your project, you build it so you know it better than answering any of the unknown questions. So I think the key part of our course is actually this portfolio project, and we kind of focus on it from the module 2, from the module of Node.js. All right, some prerequisites which are nice to have, but it doesn't mean that if you don't know JavaScript like your primary language, that you cannot attend. Of course, that's not true, but it would be great if you know JavaScript basics as well. If maybe you haven't written a piece of code in JavaScript, but still, if you will write in Java or PHP or any other language, that's also normal. That's also fine. But I want to say one more word in here about JavaScript basics. If you are not don't have too much experience with the JavaScript yet, I think what will help if you stay motivated, you stay with a goal to learn and learn more. So read some articles, read about theory of JavaScript, and we will help with practicing, of course. Have basic understanding of DOM APIs would help us to build the front-end part of application. If you know HTML and CSS, that's awesome, but we are not gonna focus on that part in our course. But still, that's gonna help you to build your front-end application. And as I mentioned, we think that you're gonna use GitHub as a main place for exercises. So if you are familiar with Git, that's gonna help you. But I think the most important, if you're gonna have fun and if you're gonna stay motivated to learn new technologies during the course, and then we have a perfect match. All right. Okay, that ends the first part about the course. I think I'm gonna give half a minute for you to think. If you have any questions so far, if not, then we can continue with our technology chosen for today, the JavaScript, and some interesting questions in JavaScript. So, do you have any questions?
You guys can raise the hand just in case if you want to ask a question by the voice, so we can unmute you.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Well, not many questions, so that's good. Okay. I don't know if you followed us in our previous sessions. We already had quite nice sessions. Two of them were about interviewing with JavaScript, and then we had also Node.js introduction, React.js introduction. So feel free to find them in our Slack. And today we kind of continue this flavor, these thoughts of JavaScript. And this slide I called it best parts of JavaScript. It's also a little irony, but you will find. I hope you will find it quite funny as I do. So there's just a few questions for us. That's a link for some third-party repository, but I find it really useful. At least you can find some fun material in there about the JavaScript questions, and some of these questions in this slide from this repository. Also questions to you guys and girls. So first of all, what do you think set timeout and set interval are part of JavaScript or not? Feel free to in a chat. Yeah, thanks, Sergey. Any other alternative opinions about that? Thanks for answer so far. Part of browser, thanks for this answer. That's actually I think it's closer to the answer that that we might expect on the interview questions. So set timeout and set interval. In fact, it's actually not obvious, but those are not parts of JavaScript. Indeed, that's part of browser APIs. But wait a second, it's not only a part of a browser because you can also find it in Node.js. So that's already a bit confusing. But believe me, in this event loop introduction to Node.js that we're gonna do during the course, we're gonna talk about this set timeout, how they all apply to event loop and so on. But those are not part of JavaScript, so you will not find it in official specification of ECMAScript. You still can use them in the browser, and indeed, if you just put set interval, you will have this function in here. Set timeout the same, and the same applies to Node.js, but they have a slightly different APIs. All right, the next question is that's mind-blowing. Honestly, when I saw it first time, I was thinking, what is this? So does anyone know or have an idea what's going to be printed in the console in here? Yeah, just yeah. If you make a mistake, that's all okay. Just I think what's going to be the most logical answer for that. Anyone? Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Akalpit. Good answer. Something already. Yeah, actually, it's very hard to explain even why it works. Like what is gonna output. So yeah, it's gonna output is gonna output the second word in here. Yeah, we can try it actually. Yeah, it's exactly the same answer. So the second word is outputted in here. But of course, this is a question where the most important, most interesting is why is like that. And yeah, I find it very hard to explain, but I'll try to do that. Well, yeah, what we can see here is many references to a call function. Well, a call function is a function prototype in JavaScript. It's a part of a function prototype, and as well as an apply function. So what happens here is we take a call a reference from the console log, which is again a function prototype, part of a function prototype. So it's just a call, and then we take another link to a call function. So yeah, if I may say it like that, that doesn't matter how many times you do it with this referencing. What matters is actually when you call. Sorry for this call fun terms, but what matters here is when you come to the last part of this expression, when you actually execute some function. In this case, you execute a function apply, which is also a part of a function prototype. So you execute the function apply, and then what matters for us is what is on the left from the dot, and that's going to be a context of apply function. So when we execute apply, we can just have a look at the left part, and then we will see that the apply was called on the call function. And that's what matters in this example. That's maybe the only thing that matters in this example, but it doesn't bring us closer to the topic. It's just an introduction. Yeah, that's what we're doing here. And call and apply, those are very similar functions in JavaScript. Those let you to execute the function on a different context. So they're doing pretty much the same. The call function is just the differences in the way how they arguments. Apply expects the arguments as an array, and actually the array is what you can see in here. The array is the array of this sentence splitted by space, and then you have an array of 8 words in it, what is going to be printed in the console. So this is an array that is provided to the apply function as arguments. But the first argument actually in here is the function. So this is how fat arrow functions are written in a new ECMAScript 6 syntax, in ECMAScript 6 JavaScript syntax. And what it does, it just returns the first argument. But I think we can even not focus on what is this function or what is not. Okay, so apply does execute the call function, and it executes with 2 arguments. The first one is a function. The second one is all arguments of it. Yeah, I already see how explanation is hard here. But okay, so what we did actually at that point, we executed the call, and what call does is doing pretty much what is the same as apply does. So we can change the context of how the function is executed. So you see that's a second layer in here. So yeah, let's back quickly to apply. So we apply, we execute a function, this one, with these arguments, but we execute it on a call, and that means that actually what is gonna happen, we are gonna execute the call on this function. So this is gonna be a context of a call. So we call in this exactly function in here, and we provide to a call method arguments that are passed to this second parameter. And the arguments are passed to this parameter is the array of this sentence split it into by spaces. So the first argument that was provided to a call to a call of this function was what? So this is a scope of our function executing, and then we pass in all other parameters, all the rest 7 parameters to a real function, which is this one. And that one at this point we actually care of what this function does, and what it does is just returns the first argument that it was passed in there. And the first argument was is. The first argument was the word is that is passed, and then we just return it. And the console works in the way that it will just output what was returned from the function. So yeah, that's kind of explanation of it. And if you can trust me, if I do it something like that, and then I just return the b, so the third argument is going to be gonna, and so on. Yeah, but don't worry if that's a really complicated example, and I hope you will never find it in the interview questions, just for us to a little warm up before the actual material.
Alex, I think guys were a little bit confused about 4 times call. Can you explain it? So they should just drop I mean, it doesn't matter like how many times.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what thanks, Evgeny. So what happens here? Yeah, what happens here is actually we're not calling, we just are referencing. So we say, okay, this is a function call, and then I'll try to find a property call on the function call, and I can get it because of prototype, the prototype of all functions in JavaScript. They have a call function. So what happens here, it doesn't really matter how many times you put a .call. It in the end it will be just call function, which you can find yourself like that. So call or apply, those are parts of all function prototype. If you just output the function prototype like that, you will find all of them in here. So you have call, you have apply, you have many other things. But yeah, so those are not really executing a function, but referencing to a call function itself.
Yeah, basically that was made specifically to confuse, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. If you follow the link that I provided, you will maybe in the title of this repository.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
pretty cool.
Yeah. Thanks. So the next one, I think that one is simpler, but if I was answering it myself, probably I will make a mistake anyway. So what do you think is going to be outputted in this example? Any ideas? Thanks, Sion. Thanks, Sergey. That's closer, I think. Anyone else? Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, thanks, Kushal. Okay, yeah. I will now spoiler it. Okay, we have a banana. Yeah, I think in original one that you will find in repo was like that. That gives that makes more sense, of course. Banana, but yeah. What happens here is it's more interesting again. So in JavaScript is a dynamically typed language. We will find it in the next slide, but. What happens with this environment in JavaScript is that you can do different operations on different types of data, And JavaScript will solve most of the most of the things for you. So it will try to cast one type of data to another type of data if those are not possible to match in this operation. In this case, we sum the string with string in first part, and then we do something a little different. We try to sum next one, but before we put a string, we put another plus sign, and that one is a single plus sign, and that executes a little differently. Well, not executes, it behaves a little differently. So when applied to some other type of data, it actually, as you can expect, actually, it tries to interpret the value here on the right as a number. If it's not a number, that it will try to cast it to a number, and that's what happens here. And the JavaScript will try to cast the a as a string to a number, and then a is not a number. And that's a symbolic, not a symbolic, but we have this constant in JavaScript, not a number. Yeah, funny parts of funny things of JavaScript, that actually, if you type of not number, is going to be a number. And yeah, that's best parts of JavaScript, like my student says. So yeah, so you got not a number in here. And then again, JavaScript will try to cast the whole expression in here to a string, because those concatenate in strings. And then not a number as a number will become a string, not a number, and then you get a banana in the end. Okay, well, yeah. That was again not a point to remember it, and not even that you have to remember all these casts, but that's just a warm-up example for us.
I actually have Albert Torres. He's raising the hand.
Oh yeah, sure.
All right, Albert. I'm sorry, Alberto. You can talk.
Oh, I was just gonna answer the question. I didn't know how. Sorry.
No worries. Anyway, guys, yeah, if you want to ask question by voice, you can raise your hand and we will unmute you. Okay. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. Well, last one is the simplest here. It's actually not a question, but I was so surprised. Yeah, I told you I have, yeah, I think more than 10 years experience with JavaScript. When I saw it, I was like, what is that? In fact, you can use HTML comments inside your JavaScript. That's a valid JavaScript, and yeah, that's, I don't know. Please put plus if you saw it before, or otherwise minus. But yeah, that was just when I saw it, I thought that's ridiculous. But yeah, that's a fact. Please don't use comments in your JavaScript. All right. Yeah. Also was surprising to me, guys. Okay, let's now be more serious. Now we go into more structured questions, more structured agenda. Okay, let's talk a little about data types in JavaScript. So that was a follow-up maybe from this question, from the previous questions for us. So we started already discussing like JavaScript is a dynamically typed programming language, and what it means that you can store different types of data in your variables, and then the JavaScript will do anything for you to that your operation finishes without an error. So it will try to cast a number to strings, strings to numbers. In fact, if you read some serious book, some big book about JavaScript, you might find some huge table of all the cast operations that can happen in JavaScript, around 100, I think. But please, don't even think of remembering it. That's not the point of programming and the specific and also programming in JavaScript. So don't remember. There's some basic stuff. Well, I might say maybe I think 3 or 4 of these casts are popular to use in a normal JavaScript expressions, but those are also intuitively very intuitive to use. So yeah, don't worry. Just remember that JavaScript tries to solve most of the complicated stuff for you, and it is very friendly in storing different types of data in variables. Yeah, so what's these different types of data inside JavaScript? Mainly, those are separated into main classes. First is primitive types, and for primitive types, previously we had just 5 of them, 5 types of data. That was a number, a string, a boolean, null, and undefined. Starting from 2015, JavaScript started developing quite expanding in different areas, and one of the outcomes is that now we have a little more primitive types, but the good thing, we don't have to use all of them, but it's nice to have them if we want to actually use them. So now we have symbol, begin, and I remember I saw something else coming in the next releases of JavaScript, but I think this is just will continue to grow. And again, those are more specific types of data that probably you don't need in writing a normal application. Let's see some of the examples of these types of data. So numbers, those are yeah, I think very commonly used across all programming languages. So we have numbers in JavaScript. And in fact, in JavaScript, you only have float numbers, as in many interpreting languages. So when you can actually specify 1, but that would we still float one, the float type of number. But again, usually you don't have to focus on these specifics. So you can put 1. You can put 2, you can put 3.5. That's indeed the float number by its, how it's written. Then we have something else as well, and that's different radix, different radixes, and different digital. Yeah, I think that's the right word. Digital radix for your numbers. So you can write your values of a type number in this kind of way. So 0x, 0b. 0x stands for 16 radix, and 0b stands for byte for a radix of type 2. So you can just in a binary you can just use 1s and 2s, and that will be converted in like a byte representation of a number, and then that can be converted to 10-based radix as well. That's actually happens automatically. If you just store your variable like that, you say my number is 0b11, then if you just output it in a normal way, it will tell you that it's free. So it's just a way to write numbers in a more appropriate way for your task. Then we have strings, of course, and strings in JavaScript are quite flexible. You can declare them with single quotes. You can declare them with double quotes. You can actually declare them with how it's called back quotes, I think, if I'm not mistaken, backticks. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, what happens with these backticks, and that was kind of holy word that when they first appeared in the language, like which one we should use now. That was I think 5 years before or something. So what that was brought with the ECMAScript 2015 standards for us, and it allows to declare string variables on multiple lines. I think that's just awesome possibility to have, and I miss it in other languages, to be honest. But it also been introduced to these kind of expressions. Those are named template literals. And does anyone know how to make this expression valid? Again, thanks for answering. Well, Yeah, I will explain it a little. So template literals is a possibility in JavaScript in which you can define a function. You can say, okay, I want a function my, and what it's gonna do, it actually takes some arguments, like let's put it argument 1 right now, and then you can return anything as the output of it. You can even return 3 to 1 as a number, not that we expected from a string. And then this part, oh, thanks, shall I see? I think that was correct. Almost correct. if you meant my as a function. So yeah, and then this my function will be applied to a string, and it will output what your function does. So you can use this argument inside your function, and then you can use the output to something else. That's very very handy, and it's actually used in web components world a lot, where we deal in technology stack in our work environment. Yeah, but again, we're gonna discuss it through the course in more depth. These whole features of ECMAScript 2015, I can name many more. For example, I love to talk about asynchronous iterators, and generators, for example, and we're gonna also dive into that one. But back to our data types. Of course, we have Boolean, and I'm gonna maybe say something good. We don't have any specifics on Boolean. Well, maybe not that not that specific that I want to mention. So we just have true and false. We have two different types of metadata, null and undefined. And I think it was a very popular question in the past, like what is the difference between null and undefined? But I think that actually doesn't matter so much. I think I would expect someone to answer, yeah, those two types of data specify that there is no value for variable. So null specifically says so. Undefined can mean some other things as well. It can mean that variable was not defined at all. And a fun fact, when I just was starting, it was possible to do something like that. And that can just break your code in so many things, in so many ways. So after that, actually your undefined was always 1 to 3. Yeah, because usually developers use something in if statements, like if my variable is undefined. So you can imagine that actually, if you just redefine the value of undefined, that's yeah, that just kind of breaks something in the code. Luckily, however, this expression will not give an error. It will also not override the initial value of undefined nowadays. So that's good. That's good. In older browsers, that was not the case. Just to let you know that it's pretty safe to use it. Yeah. So a few examples, few interesting stuff in here. Well, we declare a number 4, and then we try to put a property on it. We say we define a property a to 5, and then what we expect here. Well, I would say that if I just output n.a, I will get a 5, but it's not the case. JavaScript works in the way that it actually will convert this number to an object in this line, in the second line, and after that it will create a property a on this object. And after this expression is executed, the object that was created will be gone. And you will get back this n as a number. And number is a primitive type in JavaScript. So it's not possible in JavaScript to add some property to a primitive value. And then when you try to read n.a, you will get undefined. Just an example to that also explains how to work with JavaScript data types. And the last example in here is a parseInt. ParseInt it's a way how you can use a standard library of JavaScript to convert a string to a number. And what I wanted to put to point in this expression is that please don't forget, if you write your code, don't forget to specify the radix in the second argument of parse. int, because by default, of course, it's going to be 10. But if you don't know what's your first argument, you don't know what data is in there, and you don't specify the second argument, then it will actually the parseInt will try to convert it in a way that it finds it appropriate. And in this case, it will use 16 as a radix. So be careful with that. And I would recommend like a general advice is read documentation of what you use, and try to be explicit, the more explicit as you can be in this case. Okay. Well, symbols, how do they use? That's a really deep topic. I think for now we are not going to focus on that. I'm just going to say that those are used in modern ways of manipulating the data in a JavaScript application. For example, all the iterable objects in JavaScript, things like an array, for example, if we specify an array here, we will find a symbol of symbol iterator, and that lets us to use any array in an expression like a in something like that, and I will then output, and then you can use like that console log a that will use the values of your array. So this syntax of loops is quite new, and things like symbol make it possible in JavaScript. But that's for deeper diving. Okay, and yeah, isn't it a keyword, Sergey? You mean symbols, right? No, it's actually, in fact, you can use it in your program. Oh, undefined. No, it was even a variable, as I told you. In older browsers, you could easily redefine it, and exactly, it's not a keyword. You know, that's very painful when you saw some errors related to that. Right. Okay. Good news, because the rest of data types in JavaScript are objects, and that brings us to an operator type of. We already showed it in a console, and generally speaking, it returns a string representation of a value that you pass into this operator. So in case of type of 1 to 2, you will get a number. So it will actually be a string, which is gonna say a number. And if you pass a string into it, it's gonna return just a string, and then you have a question: what is gonna be returned by a function? If you will pass a function into type of, you will get a function. So it's not really a type of data, because all the functions, and like I mentioned in this slide, all the rest type of values in JavaScript are objects. So in fact, function is also an object, but the type of operator is a little specific in that way. It will return a function instead of an object. So this last line here is a very commonly asked question in the interviews as well, and in some polls, and in many. I saw it in many places. So what if you apply type of operator twice to a variable? And the answer is quite simple. Actually, you don't have to think a lot about it, because the first call of a type of will already return a string to you. Well, different strings, depending on which data you pass to it. And then a second call will be applied to a string, no matter what is the content of the string. And the type of a string is a string, so that's going to be always a string. This operation, you can, I think, freely remember that, but it also has a very logical explanation. But then we come to another one. Can even this expression be truthful? And I will reference you to our previous videos. We explained this example very well in one of them. I will briefly explain it right now as well. So in short, yes, it can be. So what happens here is we check if a as a variable can be equal to 1 and can be equal to 2 and can be equal to 3 at the same time. That's what this expression means in here. And I think what can point you to the right answer for this question is that in here we use a double equal sign, and in the last part of expression we use a triple equal sign. And those have different meanings in JavaScript. In short, the double equal sign doesn't check the type of data. So it doesn't check that A is a number. However, if you use triple equal sign, JavaScript will also be ensure that try to be ensure that your types of data that you try to equalize, though they are the same. And that actually gives us already a way how we can implement, how we can make it truthful, this expression. And the answer is actually to use value of or toString methods. So that's a very tricky question that's asked at some interviews, I know. And the answer is that, okay, we have objects. Objects in JavaScript are complicated. They are complex types of data in JavaScript. And then when JavaScript tries to use different types of data in one operation, this is exactly what happens in our comparison in here. Then JavaScript will try to convert or cast one type of data to another. In this case, it will try to convert the A, because JavaScript knows that on the right side of this expression we have a number. So it will try to convert A to a number. And then we might know that a value of is a function that is part of object prototype in JavaScript, but we can also redefine it just to any function we want. And then it will be called when JavaScript tries to convert one type of data to a number. And that's a point for us where we can say, okay, I'm going to just redefine the value of, and I'm going to say it's a function, so it's going to be called during this expression. And then after each time it's called, I'm going to increase the counter inside my my closure that I created here, exactly for the reason to count how many times my value of a function was called. So what happens, one more time, I define as a variable A in here. I then use an expression which is called immediately invoked function expression. This is exactly what happens in here. So I just wrap the function into brackets, and then I immediately call it, and that's why it's called immediately invoked function expression. And that gives me a possibility to define a data inside the closure that was created in here. So we defined the state, it's I, and then we defined, and when we returned an object, so our A is actually becoming an object in here, and we say that our object will have a property or method value of. So JavaScript will call whenever anyone calls our value of. It can be explicit or implicit call. In this case, it's implicit call. It's called because we try to convert A to a number, and that's why value is called implicitly. And then here we just return I, and then after the call we increase it with using this double plus operator. That's very common in other languages as well. So we store this variable in our closure, and that's why that's the way how we can increase it every time it is called. Let me show you actually that this is gonna work. I'm just gonna copy this example in here. So if I just output A, it says it's an object and it has this value of property, and then every time I'll do something like that, it will call my value of function, and you see the real value of a variable is increasing. So yeah, that's a very tricky question, and also helps to understand like how the complex data is structured, and how it can be casted to other types of data in JavaScript. ToString is the same, it's kind of the same, but it works when JavaScript tries to convert an object to a string. So if we want to compare A to a string 1 in this case, and A to string 2, we can create our some kind of business logic in here, different one, I guess. And then instead of implementing the value of, we're gonna implement the toString function, and that's gonna solve it for us. Again, that's not a frequently used technique in normal programming, but if you see it somewhere in the code or somewhere in the questions, that can help you a lot if you understand these basics of type conversions, how they're structured in JavaScript. Okay, then we go to our second part of JavaScript topics. That's about variables, how they can be declared in JavaScript. So variables in JavaScript, they can be created with three expressions. First one is var, this one the oldest. And then we have let and const that appeared to us in 2015 when the new standard was arrived. And then they have a slightly, they actually differ a lot. First one is the visibility of variables defined with var and with let or const. So you can see it in this example. We define var p variable inside the if construction, if statement. So it all happens in the curly brackets. However, you can still use it outside of these curly brackets, and that's what not happen if you use a const or let notation to define your variables. So if you do something like that, if you try to define a C variable inside the curly brackets and then try to use it outside, you will get a reference error that variable is not defined. That's first one. What also actually quite important to understand in this JavaScript basics, let's call it like that, is the hoisting and the shadowing part. Let's begin with hoisting. Hoisting is an example here on the bottom. Oh yes, thanks, Sergey. That's already for the right here. Let me back to it in 1 minute. Let's start with hoisting. Hoisting is a very specific technique in JavaScript. It can be applied to var variables, var defined variables. It also applies to functions, to some functions defined as function declarations. So what is hoisting is that JavaScript interpreter, before it starts to execute a function, it looks for variables defined with a var operator inside this function. And if it finds those variables, it will reserve a space for them, or reserve the space in a table where it defines variables for internal interpretation. So that means that you can already use your variable just on the first line of your function. It was even if it was defined somewhere in the bottom. You see in this example, I output console log b. And we might expect that we will get some reference error, but that will not happen because of hoisting. We declare our b variable somewhere in the bottom, but code is executed, or just before that, the b variable is already defined. So it's defined, but it doesn't have a value. So it gets a value exact at the place where it's defined and where the value is assigned to that, but you can already use it before. And that's might be a good reason to actually not use var and use let and const as a main way of declaring the variables. So what you can see afterwards, I declare the C variable, and actually, if I tried to use the C variable before I declared it, I will got the C is not defined as a reference error. So that's called hoisting, and functions are also hoisting. So that means that you can even use your functions, use these functions on the places, even if it's not declared, if it's declared somewhere in the bottom of your code. But let's talk about it in the function slide. Yeah, let's back to this right part. That's what Sergey answered. what will happen in here. And that's that was some specific of a language that I was not thinking of for a long time, but then I back to it, and I at first I didn't know what to answer here, but actually that's not a very surprising thing here. So indeed, what happens, I declare a variable x as global, then inside a function f I declare another variable x that is local, and the question is what I'm gonna see if I output x inside a function and outside of it. I think the answer is quite intuitive. So inside you will get a local, and outside you will get a global value. But if you think a little more about that, it's actually not that obvious, because what I would expect after I completely forget about this part of JavaScript, I thought it will kinda redeclare the value for the variable above. But that's not the case. So whenever you come, whenever the execution comes into the function, the JavaScript creates some new table of variables defined in this scope. So you can actually declare new variables with the same name as they're already available on the outer scope. But be careful with that. Of course, that's not the best practice at all. And moreover, it will shadow your outside variable. So that means that you will not have any chance to see the value of this x outside defined variable. Just remember, shadowing is possible, and that's not a best practice to use. Okay. There are other ways of declaring variables in JavaScript, but those are not based on operators like var, let, and const. However, they still using these concepts. What I wanted to say in this place is about destructuring. Destructuring is a technique in JavaScript. It also comes as a new standard of JavaScript in 2015. It's a way to declare variables based on some objects, and that can be very, very handy when you write some functions like that. So imagine you wrote a function whatever named, in this case it's function h, and then you passed an object inside it, and you can of course use the good old syntax when you get one argument, which is object, and then you have to read the properties of this object and declare them as a different variables inside your function. But it's much shorter way to do it exactly in this place. So with the destructuring, that's called destructuring, you can specify that okay, I want to read a property name of an object that was passed as a first argument to my function, and I will store it in a variable which is going to be called name. So I declare the variable name, and I pass the value name of a property that was of a property name of an object that was passed to a function as an argument. Same with val. So actually in here you can see two different patterns, or techniques. It's first, destructuring, in which this is this expression inside the curly braces expression, and second one is called shorthand notation. This is a way how you can say, okay, I actually to be a variable, but also a property of an object. So they combining them together in a short notation like this one is I think that can help a lot with writing code and with reading code, because reading code is the most important part of a development work, of a developer's work, because that's not a machine that are gonna have problems with reading or supporting your code. That's humans. And that's why we write in our code for humans, not for machines. So be explicit, be careful. Don't use dirty techniques. Use only very, very self-explainable code that will help you and your team in the future to maintain and support your code. Okay, thanks, Kushal. That's very. Yeah, that's very nice answer of you. Yeah, hope to see you soon. Okay, so that was destructuring in a function argument. The other one is actually you can use a destructuring not only in function arguments but everywhere you everywhere that you wanna use other variables. And you can see here we don't use the shorthand notation. So that's a full notation of a destructuring. So on the left you specify which property you want to read. On the right, after the semicolon, you specify in which variable you want to provide it. When both of these parts are the same, you can combine them in a shorthand notation. That's what happens in here. So name and val, those are exactly what we expect in the structure of our object. So instead of that, we could just put a if we would see the a as a property of an object. And same with the right part of in here. So we read a property op, and we put it to variable called b. If we wanted to declare them in same name as the property was there, we could use a shorthand notation. But this is not the case in here, because you see we use property op 2 times, and that we cannot declare two variables with the same name. And this notation is it shows you that you can use a hierarchical structure of your object, so you can read the properties inside nested objects in this case. And the question that I like to ask here, like, what could be the structure of a object so variables a and b are defined? Well, that's quite easy. If you wanna, feel free to put the answer to the chat. I'm gonna answer it in a moment myself. So what happens is that we try to define this object on the right side in a way that both a and b variables will be created and will be defined with some values. What we need to do is just to read what is happening here. So we read property op as a variable. So we can say, okay, I want to op to be a. And then I say, okay, I'm going to read property op inside LHS object of my variable. Okay, let's do that. So we define the LHS object. And then we say, okay, I still need to read property op, and do that. And then I will be specifying 2. And that ends with us having the variable a to be equal a1 and the variable b to be equal 2. That's exactly is the answer for that one. And then it's a really tricky question in here. What happens here? Is this going to work at all? Well, no, it will not. Well, first example, it will work, and this is a really hard-coded, hardcore example of JavaScript, how unintuitive it can be. So actually you can write something like that, and like the first line in here, it will work. So it will return you an object which has a property a defined, and the value of it is undefined, and that happens because of the hoisting. Actually, hoisting, and the rest is shorthand notation, and the shorthand notation works in a way that I'm specifying a property a, and I put in the value a on this property. That's what happens here, and JavaScript already knows that we used var as a operator. So it was JavaScript knew already that that variable exists. So it put the undefined value on property inside our object. That's what happens here, and that's why it actually can't happen with latent consts. Remember, latent consts don't hoist, and that's why you will get a reference error in this case. So this is the differences between var, latent const, and also with some destructuring, mechanism that I showed you in a previous slide. Let's summarize it a bit, and those just my advice. Feel free to argue or put any of your thoughts in addition to that. So best practices is what operator to use. That's actually not that hard, I would say, but let's define it. So first of all, of course, naming is the most complicated ever task in programming. So name variables carefully, and yeah, not correctly, but carefully. There is no way to do it correctly. So carefully choose a name for variables and functions. In general, they should be named or titled in a way that the reader of your code knows what exactly it stores just by title. Then declare variables before first usage. So against the hoisting. Don't use hoisting, to be more explicit. That can be said like that. Use strict. Use strict actually stricts our JavaScript language a little, but that's not a point to discuss for us today. So just remember, maybe we will recall it in the next sessions. Use strict. It's an optional way of JavaScript interpreter, and by default is not there. But you can always switch it on with this expression in your code. So try to use it, and yeah, of course, read about it. Okay. And then this is a general rules how to decide which operator to use. So try to not expose the variable to the outer scope as much as possible. That's easy as it can be. That means that if you have to use your variable inside the if-else only, inside if-else statement, that means hello. So if you want to use a variable inside the if-else statement, try to use const or let inside, because remember var will actually expose to the outer scope in here. Yeah, so be careful with that, and try to narrow the scope of your variables. And in general, the algorithm of choosing the operator is like that. Try to use const first. If at some point you understand that actually you have to change a value of your variable, and the const will not let you do that, then you can change it to let. So change it to let in this case, and don't use var. And I sometimes use var, but I have an argument why I'm doing it, because actually I'm using var mostly in my presentations and in the console. That's because that's very hard to do some demo. Oh, sorry, some demo like that. I define a property BCA, and then if I back to example and I want to redo it or show something like that, that's gonna give me an error. So I use vars just because of this reason, just to because it's easier to demo it. So yeah, please don't use var as much as possible. All right. Okay. Yeah, I think we're in a good way here. So we come in to our next topic, which is function. Let's overview functions. Let's overview them with the JavaScript, how they work, a little about closures, and with that, I think we will be covering most part of our lesson today. So functions. In JavaScript, as we said already, JavaScript has a primitive and complex data types. So functions are complex data types, and those are objects. So we know that functions are objects, and there are plenty of ways how we can declare functions in JavaScript. So those are function expression, function declaration, and function constructor. Let's have a look in this right example here. One is a function declaration. We declare a function, we specify a name of it, and we specify body. Next one is a function constructor. That's actually very rarely used. So you can read it like first arguments, or actually first arguments, like multiple arguments, specify the arguments list that the function will expect to be passed. And then the last argument is always a body of a function. But you can see those are passed as a string. So that means that while interpreting this declaration, JavaScript will do the evaluation of these strings, and actually will make a working code out of the string that you passed. So this is really doesn't happen frequently in a normal application or write down process. But I must say that I myself have a open source library for JSON schema specification validation, and I had to use this function for the performance reasons. So in some specific tasks, I had to find a way to create dynamic functions, and that's one of the possible ways in JavaScript. So in some specific, really specific areas, you will probably will need to use this function constructor technique. Okay, and then we have a function expression, and that we can see on a line 3 in here. That's a part of the right part of an expression that can happen in any place in your application. So you just you specify the variable a that will store a reference to a function, and in this case, a function is a kind of part of expression. So it have some circumstances in here. First of all, you can skip the name of a function, and actually name of this anonymous function is sometimes it's called. It can be handy to have it still, so you can pass a name of a function. It is it is thanks JIT. JavaScript is cool. Yeah, so you can specify a name in here in this part, and it can help you if you want to reference to it inside the body of a function. But that's maybe the only reason why you want to use it. Actually, now I also remember the other use case. You can use it also in a more in a nicer way when the call stack is is outputted or is printed to the console. So if it had a name, then you could see where exactly the stack trace output happened. And if it didn't have a name, then you wouldn't see that which exactly function it was. So it can be handy. And again, the best practice, of course, is to name your functions, but sometimes you might find handy to create them without a name. Last example in this here in this last line here is about the fat arrow functions, and that's syntax, the newly syntax of ECMAScript 2015 again. So what happens is we omit the function statement before, and we also use we use an arrow sign between the arguments and list of arguments and the body of a function. So the arrow functions or fat arrow functions the other way of declaring the functions, and they actually differ a bit with what we saw before. So what they differ in the context. They don't have this specified inside the body of a function. Well, they have this, of course, but this would be a reference to the outer scope of where this function is executed. So be careful. This is might mean different from what you expected in here. It also, this arrow function doesn't have arguments in a list as a list, so it does have this object existing inside a function, and then arrow function cannot be also used as a constructor of some object instance. So those are main differences between these 3 types of functions, or even more types of set. But more than that, functions are not, they don't differ. So you can call them, you can even change the context of these functions, and when they're executed. So yeah, in a nutshell, they will, then when you use them, you will use them in a normal way. Like in this example for us to see. So what will be the output of the following code is asked in here, and what we see here is we see that we declare an object. It's an object that contains a property A, and the property A is a function, and the function outputs this dot property, and then we see that object has a property, and it's equal to 1. So what happens next is we define a property on this function, So we say object.a.property is 2, and that means that we actually will reference to object.a in here, and object A is function, so we will have this function, and then we will define a property prop on this function, and we will assign it to value. Then we're gonna call a function in a context of object. So how we read it, and that brings us back to the first slide that I showed, this long call chain, if you remember, .call, and I said there that doesn't matter how many times we did a reference. But what matters is actually when we see the execution call, or the call of method, and that's what we see in here. So we call the method A. To the left side of it, we will see the context in which it is called, and that's going to be this property of inside this function. And then we call this method with a context of object, and the question is what is going to output. So it will use this dot property. What's going to be our this in here? Well, that's going to be our object, and then the property or prop of this object is 1. So in first one we will see 1. And then it differs in the second one. In the second expression in here, we assign a reference to a function to a new variable. We call it function. And then you see, this is a difference that I'm talking about. So when we execute this function, we don't specify in which context we call it. So we don't have this object dot, and that means that the scope where we executed, or how we executed this inside the function, is going to be different. And it also differs. It also matters in which mode you operate your JavaScript. It can be strict mode, or can be the default mode, and then the answer will be different. Again, if you operate in a strict mode, then all the functions that are not specifying the context, and when they are called, they will have a context of null inside, or maybe undefined. If I might be mistaken in this one. Doesn't matter for us now. It's because when we try to read the property of the value that doesn't exist, of undefined, or maybe of null itself, we will get an error. We will have an error here. What happens if we don't execute it in a strict mode, the other way? Then our this property inside the function is going to be the global object, which in the case of browser is going to be window, and then it depends if the window.prop is defined or not. In most cases, if you don't specify it explicitly, it's going to be undefined, so it will not show us an error. And let me show you how is that I was correct. Yeah, the first one showed 1, and the second one showed undefined. So that's exactly why and what happens in this example. All right, let's go further. And this is a closures. Closures is a really cool concept that JavaScript has. This is a way that gives the programming language gives us to a reference to a scope of function that already might be has been finished to be executed. You can read many nice articles about closures. It's a very known concept since when JavaScript was introduced. So we already saw power of closure when we talked about the example of a equal to 1 and a equal to 2 and so on and so forth. Here's another example how closure can be handy. It actually it's pretty similar to what we saw in there. The question, which is again is frequently asked on interviews, how we can implement this counter function so that we can execute it. We will get 1, then we execute it a second time, we will get 2, and then we execute the third time, we'll get 3. So how are we gonna implement that? The implementation is quite similar to what we did with the other example, with this value of example, if you remember. So we create the immediately invoked function expression, and that gives us possibility to define variables inside the closure. So in here we have a closure defined, and that will work as a closure if we do return from this function. What we need to return, well, that depends what we want, and in our case, we want it to be a function that we can call at any point in time, and that it will return us some value. And then, yeah, what we're gonna return from this function, that should be our index or our real counter. Let's call it differently. Let's call it index. And I'm gonna use Latin here because I want to be a good developer. I put a yeah, how I'm gonna call it? Well, let's put it yeah, let's put it index on. Yeah, index is all right. So from the internal function, we can call it internal actually. This one we're gonna call our external. Yeah, I'm not gonna be surprised if those are keywords and those they look like that. So I'm gonna return index, and I'm gonna increase it, and then we just need to start with zeros. That's how it works. Yeah, and I think with that one, our example is pretty much done. So if we execute our counter again, it will just increase, 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 and so on. Yeah, so just remember, closures are a really powerful technique, and also they help us to encapsulate some parts of code inside the closure, and these parts of code, they are not available from outside. So in here we use the private variable index, and no one can touch it. Just this function that we return, that we expect as be called as an API, so interface that can be called, and we expect it to be called actually, and we can control it in a better way in here because we define the variable in the closure. Alrighty. Yeah, that brings us to the next question. And for that one, I don't know if you saw it before. Please put pluses or minuses in the chat. Yeah, thanks, Sion. Thanks, Darina. That's I think most ever questioned interview questioned in JavaScript. It's like the number one of the questions that you will get in JavaScript interview. That's yeah. The question is, what would be the output? The output of this code, and how to fix it. Well, how to fix it is not clear yet. Well, what happens here is that we go from 0 to 10. With a normal for loop, and inside the for loop, we you see we back in with the timeouts, which are not part of JavaScript itself. We call a set timeout function, so we specify the timeout, and the timeout will be it works in a way that we schedule this function to be executed in a number of milliseconds that we pass as a second argument. So in 1 second. Our function is going to be called, and this function, it outputs the current index, the current iterator value. So what will be the output of this code? By the way, feel free to answer all these questions while we going through it. Today is a little specific. Normally, I usually do a pause here and let students to answer these questions. Today we do it a little differently again. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's a good attempt, Nadia. Thanks for that. Almost. Yeah, actually, it's gonna be like that. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's gonna be 10 times 10. At first time I read it a little differently. Yeah, exactly. That's gonna be 10 times 10. And we can see it in the console. And you might be wondering, what is this 132? That's you can think of it as a specific of a console, but I will answer that. So the 132 is a specific and a special number that the set timeout returns. So this is a function. Set timeout, we execute it, and it returns some number. And actually, if you call it one more time, you will see that it has some some reference to how many timeouts were already added to the schedule, already scheduled before. So every time we create a timeout, the Chrome, the modern Chrome browser just increases the number, the order number of a timeout. All right. So why 10 times 10 in here? Let's briefly go through it. So we created iterator, started with 0, then we called set timeout 10 times. And we made this function, this callback, to be scheduled for 1 second. What happens after 1 second then? Well, our functions start to execute, our timeouts callbacks start to execute. And in this point in time, we will reference to I, and the I is going to be all the time is going to be one value, and the value is going to be 10. Is because actually when you could answer like it's going to be 9 times 9, 9 times 10 times 9 or something like that, but it's going to be 10 indeed, and that's because last step in this iteration, the I will be increased to 10 already. But in this case, the loop will not continue, and that's our second statement in here. It says it should be less than 10. If it's equal or more than 10 or greater than 10, then it will not proceed with the body of the loop. But I is already 10 at this time, and that's why after 1 second, when we reference to our I variable, it's going to be 10. It's going to be 10, and it's going to be 10 times 10. So because it's 10 times loop will be executed. And how to fix it in the way that we still want our asynchronous timeouts, but we want to print numbers from 0 to 9. And there are plenty of ways to doing that. Of course, infinite number of doing that. But the most useful maybe, the first one with introduction of let and const. You see we are back again with this operators let and const. It just allows us to use I without any further changes of the code. So we specify let instead of var, and you see that's already shows how let is better than var in that sense. And then we just gonna output our numbers from 0 to 9 without any problem on it. Well, that's a modern way of solving it, and that's the answer that is expected to this question. What happened before when I was asked on interviews like that 5 or 6 years or 8 years ago, I had to solve it a little differently. For that, I created the closures, or I created some references to variables. And how I did that, well, you can make it with, for example, using the bind function. So when you call a bind, which is also one of the function of function prototype, with a bind function, you can attach the context to a function. So bind, call of a bind, is returning a new function which has a context attached to it. And in this case, context is this. And I can use, instead of I'm gonna output this, and it's gonna be, when it's called in here, it's gonna be the number that I expect, 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. And every time the timeout callback will be executed, it's gonna be a different callback all the time, and it will have a different context in this, so it will output the same number, 0 to 9. And more usage of a bind, when you can pass the argument as a second argument to bind, and in this case you can still use the same notation I, but you have to pass it explicitly in the argument list inside the function. But the rest is the same with the bind. So yeah, that's a more the older way of solving that. So please focus on that one, but also be sure that that it's possible to do something else. Like also you can use immediately involved function expressions in this case, or just create some other solution. Maybe you can even create the function constructor if you'd like. Okay. Yeah, one more thing that's I recommend it to all my students. That's about bind function that I just mentioned. So that's the behavior of it is well. First of all, it's known. So when I bind some value to a function, it actually returns me a new function with a context attached to it, like we just said. And the question that I'm trying to ask here, and that's a self-study question. Please consider of solving it yourself after the lesson, because I think that will help you understand this technique and also how the bind function behaves. But not only that, also more than that. So the question is, what if you apply bind to already binded function? So imagine that we have a function. We bound one value to it, and that returned to me a new function with attached context. But then I try to bind another value to this function. What if when I call it, what's going to be context in that? I will not answer it right now. Just encourage you to do the one thing. Well, not Google, but Google is, of course, can solve it, with some effort, of course. So what I encourage you to do is to write a bind function yourself. Like try to prototype bind function. Like think of what should be done in order to attach a context to a new function, and so that it always has this when it's executed. Just think of it. Try different approaches that we partially discussed today, and then luckily you will have an answer to that question as well. Because when you implement it, after you implementing it, you will get actually the way how it's working in a browser and in our JavaScript environment. So we'll get the right answer. What's going to be the context of a secondly bind function? What's going to be outputted in this case in the console? All right. Okay, that was right in time. I'm very happy for that. We have, of course, more time to answer any questions that you have. I just wanted to close it up with a few of slides about the course and about today's lesson. First of all, a few recommendations to read is this awesome ECMAScript 6 features.org. Personally, if you, I recommend it to you if you met JavaScript before in I don't know, in the past years, so you are familiar with the older syntax of JavaScript. Otherwise, forget about it. So what you will find here is different examples of a new syntax of JavaScript and how it can be seen in an old way of JavaScript. Maybe just to give us some small example, shorthand notation I'm looking for that we mentioned today. Yeah, exactly like that. So how it can be interpreted in a different style, in an older style. So that's one. It's very nice, nice site to explore. Well, then exploring ECMAScript 6, the online book by Axel Rashmeyer. He's very known in the JavaScript community, and he has much more than just exploring ECMAScript book. He has different other books like JavaScript and Speaking JavaScript. Well, I think he's really famous and also a famous blogger and also a writer. Yeah. He has these books online and for free. So if you are new to JavaScript, I would recommend to read either this one or maybe if you know Kyle Simpson. Kyle Simpson, he's also an amazing author, and I was happy one time to attend his workshop. He's a really amazing guy. Yeah, one resource for you to remember, that's of course MDN, Mozilla Developer Network, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, we say like don't Google, just look in MDN, especially when we're talking about JavaScript and web. It has so nice descriptions, so nice examples of features of a language, not only about language but also about the web standards. It's just awesome, believe me, and put it to your browser. tabs, to browser bookmarks if you want to. There are plenty of nice resources. I will just recommend one more. This is a Ponyfoo. It has outstanding amount of nice articles and blogs. Don't know why so slowly opening for me. Okay, let's not wait for it. If it's gonna open, then it's gonna open. Yeah, it has a little maybe not old but very interesting design. Yeah, I just like it personally because it has really nice articles. They filter them, and they're really responsible for the content they are doing. So today we overviewed the course agenda. We went through the theory, like data types, variables, functions, closures with JavaScript. We had very interesting and nice examples of how JavaScript works. I hope you liked it. I encourage you to go to otosu.io website to look at the full agenda of the course that we are doing. We started just today with this first lesson, but there are 23 lessons to become next, and again the final project that's very important. And yeah, let's play cool. And a few more things about homework or self-assignment. I forgot that I will still have to explain a little more technical part about self-assignments for us. Yeah, please stay with us. We still have something to announce, and just not too much, but I just wanted to explain how we deal with the self-assignments, and then I'm gonna give it back to Evgeny. How we see self-assignments, maybe that's the question that you wanted to ask. We have a GitHub repository with where we store most of the materials, our materials for our students. And then what we expect from you, if you are a student, is that you also have a GitHub account. And believe me that if you don't, please do that right now. That's like a social network for developers, I would say. And again, that can store all the portfolio, all your portfolio as a developer, and it's very useful to have. And also, it's open source and it's online way of storing your code and reference to your code. So it's nice. So then we expect you to have your GitHub account, and then you can create a repository where you will store the self-assignments and the code for self-assignments of this course. You can name it in that way, how I did it for myself, like your name, and then Otus. That's up to you. That's completely up to you. It's just that's gonna be easier for both of us to understand it at any point in time when we want it. Then the strategy that we want to use for self-assignments is that after each lesson, like today, for example, we will, not after each lesson, but after the lessons that have assignments, we will provide, of course, the assignment description, and then you will create a branch in your repository, and the branch can be titled in this block lesson number way, but that's again up to you how you name it. It's just I think it's good to get some proposal, to have some proposal at least for that. And then you put the code, you push this code to this branch, and you create a pull request from your branch to your repository, from your branch one to your master branch, and then you send us a link, or you mentioned us, our instructors, to this pull request. We review it in a way that like you might get reviewed in any job, just normal for developers. We'll put comments if you have any, and after answering all the comments, if you want to, you can just merge it to master. So you will have your code in your GitHub page, and it's going to be reviewed, and yeah, it's going to solve one of the other tasks. Yeah, we encourage you to not use some scaffolding. Don't put scaffolding into this pull request. Some scaffolding code, but it's not coming in the next few self-assignments. It's going to be afterwards. So for us, we will explain it later as well. I have some example pull requests to look. See, it's from my JavaScript 1 branch to my master branch. It's on my repo, and it has some README description. Again, that's just we encouraging you to do it like that, but it's not necessary. If you just want to put a code in there, we will completely understand that. That's all right. We have our GitHub advanced full stack JavaScript developer bootcamp. That's where we will store most of the materials for our students, and that's you can get an access by request, I guess. Okay, then the task, last part of my my slides here. A task is to write a tree function. So you have to write a body of a tree function, which takes an hierarchical object containing name and items properties. So the structure can be like that, and then it outputs the tree, and you can see the hierarchical the hierarchy of an object that you passed in there. So it should be using the recursive algorithm, I guess, to call itself. And then output it in some nice way to show this object, in a more descriptive way than it was in input. Yeah, I hope that's clear. So please, please find some time to solve these assignments. Send us a pull request, and yeah, let's see what you got in the comments. All right.
Alex,
thanks.
Can we put this self-assignment into the Slack channel? And guys, let's move on to the Slack. So on, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. I just posted a link to this presentation, so feel free to get back to it at any point in time. Please share your feedback with us. That's very important for us to improve in next iterations. And yeah, have a nice coding. All right, Evgeny, I think I'm done with my material in here.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex. Are you guys still with us? Let's do a quick poll. That's very important for us. It will take just also couple minutes. I hope suddenly you can see our poll. Can you? No. What's happening? Yeah, Natalia. Yeah, the other guy. I'm not sure what's happening, but is it a pop-up? Yeah, it should be pop-up. Yeah, let's have one more minute, and we'll continue. Right, I see that 6 people out of 14 answered this poll. All right, I will end the poll, and we have 6 people who voted. yeah, I'll share with you also the results. That would be interesting. Looks like that for some people it was a little bit complicated. We have people who liked it, and yeah, that's very useful for us, so we can improve our each and every session. That's how we work. Okay, let me continue. You guys, you still see my screen, right? Let me check one thing. Okay, let me go with again, we wrap it up. This is a course today was introductory, the first class, and that's actually was a kickoff. So the next class will be on next Saturday. Again, just wrap it up. This is how our course looks like. 24 lessons. Today was a little bit more than 1.5 hours, but it's going to be usually 1.5 or 2 hours. 2 weeks projects, online webinar, and yeah, everything was covered. The most important, I think, for you will be, again, like you will get a skills. That's what we are promising. But at the same time, you also will get a mock interviews with potential employers. The top students will get there. And just to wrap it up, today we have still continue limited offer. So the course itself, it's $2,020 itself, but it's already a pretty affordable price. But we had a special bonus and discount that was a 45% off, which is gonna be $1,111. And this offer will be valid until Monday. If you guys liked it, join us. Go to this link. Let me get this link to you, and I'll post it here. And I'm ready to answer any questions you may have. There is a typing question. 3 is advanced for me. It should be too advanced, probably. All right. Let me see. All right, guys. If you don't have any questions, I'll see you all on next Saturday, and have a great weekend then.
Thanks.
The rest of the weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.